It's a pain to see the screen.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. I'm just letting everyone in now, sir.
Sure.
Okay. Sure. So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Wiley webinar series. I would like to start this webinar by giving a brief introduction about today's speaker, Professor Rahul Day. Professor Rahul Day teaches information systems and artificial intelligence at IIM Bangalore. His research interests are in ICT for development, open source, e-government systems, digital payments, internet governance, telemedicine, and AI ethics. He has published 4 books, including a textbooks, 26 articles in international peer-reviewed journals, and 50 articles as book chapters and conference proceeding papers. He has wide international experience and has taught various courses in the universities in the United States, Spain, France, Sweden, Norway, and Italy. He has also offered a course on the edX. He is served on the board of governance of IIM Bangalore and continues to serve on the boards of Institute for Development and Research in Banking Technology and Software Freedom Law Center in India. He is the president of the Indian chapter of the Association of Information Systems and the honorary chair for the International Conference on Information System Hyderabad 2020. He serves on the editorial boards of the journals Information and Management, Governor Information Quarterly, Digital Government, Research and Practices, International Journal of Information Management, and IIM Bangalore Review. He has also received 2 international awards, one for his research and one for his teaching. We are just starting the webinar now, and if anyone has any question, they can ask it at the end of the webinar or can type in the question in the chat window and the sir will answer them at the end of the webinar. Now my request sir to start the webinar.
Thank you, Manish. And thank you, all of you. I'm seeing close to 79, 80 of you have registered. I'm sorry, I don't know many of you, but I can see your names. It is a great pleasure to be able to speak to you in these times when we are all locked in at home. Maybe at better times, I will be able to meet you personally. So I just thought I'll begin by, Manish has read out a very nice introduction to me. I just thought I'll personally say a little bit about myself. I am in Bangalore, locked at home, and our campus is very nice. So at least I can go walk around a little bit. Pandemic is hurting a lot of us, uh, but we are coping. And let me begin my talk. I'll share my screen with you. Today, I will be talking about the issue of managing information systems during and after a pandemic. One request, if you have any issues with the audio, or you can't see the slides, please do indicate to Manish and he can get across to me through the chat channels. So what I will do today is uh, just talk a little bit about the pandemic. You are already familiar with the basic contours, but I just want to frame it from the way we see it in terms of information systems. I will say a few things about managing information systems during the crisis, and then some challenges that will come up in the future because of this crisis. Now, this is a crisis of humongous proportions, and many of us, and including me, have been talking about how to manage post-pandemic, because that's when the serious problems will arise. So not that there are not serious problems right now, but there'll be huge, huge problems. Now, Currently, the contours of the pandemic are that it has affected more than 130 countries. It is almost all countries in the world, and it has forced almost everybody to go into industrial lockdown and social distancing, which basically means, there is almost no manufacturing going on, there's no work going on. And since we are in an industrialized era, this means a huge portion of our workforce is unemployed right now. And of course, we have to maintain social distancing. So a lot of the things we took for granted, just like coming to IIM Bangalore and having a meeting or having classes, all that is now shut down. So the industries affected are across the board: manufacturing, retail, e-commerce, education, global trade. Everything is badly affected. One of the things that has actually increased significantly is the shift to online activities, what people are now calling work from home. For instance, I'm working from home right now, and so are you. And Bangalore, I was seeing some statistics. Bangalore has seen 100% increase in internet traffic. Massive, it's basically doubled. A lot of IT, information systems, are being used for all types of management activities like monitoring, control, and so on, for the pandemic itself, and also for whatever activities are going on within organizations. So I thought, well, since I have an opportunity to speak to you, I will draw some insights from my textbook, which Wiley has published, and it is in its second edition, and just see what we can see about managing systems, because these are crisis times. And in these times, it is very important that we sharpen our thinking about what can be done effectively now and later. So let me talk about order effects. These may be unusual terms if you're not familiar with them, but actually they're quite common sense, intuition based. An order effect, what we call in information systems, and I discussed this in my first chapter in my book, is a first order effect is something that happens pretty much immediately. When you bring in information systems, um, basically increases in speed and efficiency and accuracy happens. Think about using spreadsheets for doing some calculation work. Basically, it helps you increase your speed and efficiency. Second order effects are some things that happen a little later when you get used to these things. And maybe a few months later, there may be changes in the organization because technology has come in. And similarly, third order effects is something that happens much later. In fact, starts affecting industries. So if you look at the order effects that the pandemic is creating, one of the things is massive increase in collaboration and communication. We are all on Zoom right now. And I have used this tool before for the last 5 years or so, but mainly on occasion. Sometimes a meeting is online, sometimes somebody's in a different country and I have to have a conversation. But today we are holding every meeting, every class, everything on Zoom. So this is the first order effect of the pandemic, which is massive increase in collaboration. Second order effect, which is slowly happening now, and I expect will happen a lot, is this work from home culture. We were not used to working from home. We actually are supposed to work from office. But as I see it, work from home will become a kind of a norm now. In the next 3 to 6 months, many people around the world will be working from home, even though lockdowns may be lifted, simply because they have to be careful and have to maintain social distancing. Now, intriguingly, the third order effect could be that if we start working from home, actually there is no need for an office space. Now, this has been happening in places like Bangalore and other places also quite a bit. You have these new types of companies that are coming in called WeWork, where they give you temporary workspaces. You go there, you sit and work and go away. But more importantly, many people are working from home anyway. Even if they have an office in the city, they maybe have been going in 2 or 3 days a week. Otherwise, they're working from home. And because of this third order effect, we may have lesser need for travel. And cities like Bangalore, which are actually the most congested cities in the world, Bangalore is really awful. Um, it may actually improve if people are working from home mostly. Traffic will improve. Will there be other effects? Yes, and I will have more to say about this as we go along. So, just this intuitive idea of order effects gives us a framework by which we can understand what is happening now and what will happen later. Take, for instance, internet services. Internet services, there is a huge increase in demand for bandwidth. As I said, in Bangalore itself, there is massive growth, for almost 100% growth in bandwidth. In some cases, there are in other cities, people are demanding more bandwidth, and I've heard of companies which are ramping up their capabilities, whatever they can do to meet this massive bandwidth demand. Now, tied up with this bandwidth demand is the whole issue of the governance of the internet. This is not something we talk about very frequently, but this is a very important issue in information systems. Uh, Already, you may have heard firms like Facebook and Netflix have actually throttled their bandwidth. They've actually reduced the the rate at which that they are sending out information. This is mainly to control the entertainment uses of the internet and allow the more useful work to carry on. Now, many of us have been arguing another thing which is quite common in India is to reduce shutdowns. There used to be many internet shutdowns in cities before the pandemic for various reasons, security reasons, sometimes threat of violence and so on, bad rumors spreading. Uh, Today, the shutdowns actually have gone to zero because people are so dependent on it. So these are internet governance issues. The third one is very related to this, and you must have heard of this also. There is now a growing need for security and authentication and encryption. As you know, Zoom has been criticized around the world because there have been people breaking into Zoom and doing strange things and messing up the Zoom sessions. So, in fact, some countries have banned Zoom also, saying you cannot use this. I am Bangalore, and I'm sure Wiley also would have taken steps to ensure that security is maintained. So these are growing scenarios. Now, what else is going on? There are new startups emerging. Already, I have been approached by many people who are saying, because I'm involved with hosting an international conference, there are startups coming up and saying, we will help you host conferences. We will manage the security for you, the authentication, encryption, the bandwidth management. We'll do all that for you. And these are new companies. They may have been around, but they're new for us because they're now emerging on the scene in a big way. Uh, there is a huge support now coming from the for the work from home culture. So there is a lot of writing and a lot of management speak about how to manage this because it is not something we are used to, and many of us dislike it. Actually, we prefer going to work. I have seen some startups coming out and offering augmented reality and virtual reality products. They're coming out and saying, okay, you're sitting at home and you need to work with something that you need to see clearly. We will give you an augmented reality method of seeing it. There is now already startups which are offering AI basically facial recognition, voice recognition technologies, which will allow you to do things like interviews online. Examinations are being done online. Uh, there is also with this, what comes as a challenge is a need for evaluating new technologies. Now, this is a big headache for managers in companies. All this new stuff keeps coming, and you wonder, what should we do? For example, we are using Zoom. In my institute, I have been suggesting let us all move to something called Jitsi, JITSI, which is also a video conferencing tool. And there are others who are saying move to Google or to Microsoft and so on. So these are choices that have come up, and our managers are really struggling to figure out which one should they go for. Now, there are many ethical and social issues coming up already at a very severe scale. For instance, I have in my chapter discussed something called workplace monitoring and surveillance. This is uh, because we are all on technology all the time. What we do, when we do, how we do it is either being recorded or it is being seen in a dramatic manner. I see a hand raised by Ankush. Ankush, if it is a very urgent question, go for it. Or Manish can read it out, or I will take it later. Either way is fine with me.
So, sir, I don't
Manish?
see a question right now.
Okay.
So,
So if you
just a
can
couple of requests to sir, just to increase the volume, sir.
increase the volume. Okay, let's try to press. So, is my volume better?
Yes, sir, little better.
Okay. I'll just hold this here. So the two things are workplace monitoring and surveillance. The third one is privacy. And in fact, there is an issue of privacy around the world. Even in India, we know now that the Supreme Court says that privacy is a fundamental right, and therefore many people have been saying asking whether their meetings are being recorded, and does it violate their privacy. Related to this is something called techno stress. Again, I've written about this in my textbook. There is a huge demand for employees now to learn new technologies. This is happening across the board. Children in schools are being asked to work with Zoom. They had never worked with Zoom before. Students in colleges are being worked with learning platforms which they had not used before. uh, People in offices, people in government offices are being asked to use technologies and learn them, which they hadn't seen before. Then the techno stress issue is, are we always at work? If you are working at home and you're at home all the time, you are most likely working all the time. And this is becoming a challenge. And there is now possibly there will be legislation in the future about these issues. So those were my comments on what is happening right now. I'm going to shift and say a few things about challenges for the future, what is likely to happen in the future. And by future, I mean anything from the next 3 months to the next 3 years to decades. A lot will happen. And this is what I would like you all, when we go into the discussion in maybe another 15 minutes or so, to talk about, and I'd be happy to discuss this with you. Uh, my One of my speculations, and I've written about this in magazine articles, is that there is likely to be massive increase in digital meetings and communication, and face-to-face meetings, the in-room meetings will likely decline. I should tell you one of my experiences, which I dislike and unhappy experiences. I have been working on several government committees, and many times I used to be called on Thursday evening. Oh, come for a meeting tomorrow in Delhi. The secretary or the minister would like to have a meeting at 11 o'clock. So I'm here in Bangalore. I would run to the go book a ticket, get up at 3 a.m. in the morning, catch a flight at 6, go to Delhi, spend maybe 45 minutes, 1 hour in a meeting, and then come back. And that would land up being almost a 12-hour journey for a 45-minute meeting. And many times I used to ask them, can I please come online on a on Skype or sometimes Zoom also. And that, in my opinion, is going to decrease significantly. And people will realize if you can do meetings online, why not? There will be pressure on firms to reduce office spaces. All of us know office space in urban areas are very expensive. And if we can cut down on them and reduce costs, it will mean a competitive advantage to companies. Their costs come down, others will follow, everybody will follow suit. If you can cut down on office space, less people coming in, well, why not? Then there is the increase, most likely, in what is known as the gig economy. Gig economy is where people work on short-term contracts. You can become an Uber driver without signing any long-term contracts or bonds with Uber. You just take their app, you sign on, and you start driving for them. And like that, there are many gig economy players who are in working in India and of course abroad in a big way. They don't become employees like many of us are employees, that we have a regular salary. They work on a short contract basis and they get paid immediately. And this is happening in IT, this is happening in many other spaces. Is this likely to increase? In my opinion, very strongly, yes. This work from home culture will drive also the gig economy culture, where people say, okay, if I can, I will work from home and do this for you. If I need to go to a factory and assemble things, sure, that gig economy may not work directly, work from home may not work, but the gig economy may work in just having people come in on a day-to-day basis and do the work. So that's one set of things that may happen in future. The other set of things, one of them has to do with the digital divide. In India, we have only about 40% of people have access to the internet. It's usually through smartphones and through the mobile phones. 60% of Indians don't. Most Indians have access to a feature phone. We are on the phone like a voice calling facility, but not on the internet. This is most likely going to change. The government has been trying to do this for a long time. They've been ramping up facilities, building access, but it will be very significantly and very important for those who do not have access to be given this access. The other part, also intriguing, and I covered this in my textbook also, is most of the internet and internet technologies work well in English. If you know English, you're fine. If your English is not that good, access becomes very difficult and challenging. In fact, the content on in Indian language is very little, including Hindi. Hindi is the dominant Indian language. There's very little content on it. Now things are changing, but it will be a very difficult task in future if this doesn't change. Take digital money transactions. We are all familiar with Paytm, Bheem, UPI, Phone Pay, and all, Google Pay. Most likely, these will increase significantly as this digital divide is covered. Also, we have noticed that cash payments are actually, they cannot transfer the virus. And many of us, in fact, for the last month or so, I have not pulled out my wallet at all. I almost always pay with Paytm or Bheem UPI. This is likely to increase. Even, government of India has wanted this for a long time, but after demonetization, this had increased and it had kind of leveled off. I suspect this will increase a lot subsequently. Now, surveillance and monitoring of citizens, not just in the organizations, this is a likely threat, and there are many writers around the world, not just in India, who are saying this. As we install and start creating apps like the Arogya Setu app, it is most likely that for this period it is okay. We need to know who is infected, who is not, what places are safe. But if this continues in future, which most likely it will, this will create very severe problems for us. This is not a very happy situation for a democracy. for all citizens to be constantly monitored. And this has happened in some countries where people are known. In some countries, I won't name them, it is actually known where you have been, whom you have met, and so on, and your privacy is very deeply invaded. Some more comments. I think there will be massive growth in data. It's not. This is not specific to the pandemic. There has been growth in data that's been happening at a very severe pace. Uh, After post-pandemic, as the dependence on information systems and technologies grows, data protection laws will become very, very important. In fact, data management regulation will become important. So far, when we have talked about big data and so on, we've talked about how to use the data. What can we understand? What can we learn from data? Today, that story is changing very significantly, and in future also, it will be become an whole issue of we have this data. How do we manage it? When it is created, for what is it used, for how long is it kept, and when is it destroyed. This is something I keep talking about. Data is never destroyed, data is always maintained, but there will come limits to what we will need to keep and what we will need to destroy. There is already now a movement happening across the world in which it's called the right to be forgotten movement, where people are saying, I don't want my data to be around forever. Please remove it. And that may become a very strong concern. There is the third one, which I've put up. What is the open data for public use? A lot of data today, for instance, in the Arogya Setu app, the data is being collected for public use. You and I need to know if we are entering a hard zone, which is unhealthy for us. Uh, this is fine, but subsequently, after the pandemic, will we need to know this? There are two ways of seeing it. One, yes, we will need to, for health reasons, we will need to know this. The other side is, for privacy reasons, we need to protect our citizens. So it is not always feasible to open data up and share it. And this is a very active area of thinking, debate, and research that is going on. There are also issues of ethics that are involved in here. What should we do with this data and how to proceed? So, to conclude, and I'm concluding here in about 20, 25 minutes, the pandemic has made us aware of many possibilities and challenges of the digital world. We are in India in many ways. We were always in a strong position. We are, as we say, we are an IT superpower. Um, People argue we are also a cricket superpower. I agree. With cricket and IT, we are superpowers in two domains. So we've had one advantage of having a lot of very skilled people. And as we go into the future post pandemic, I think Indian IT industries will do very well because uh, through our digital networks and this work from home culture, we will be able to reach out all over the world and deliver these services and products that we are so good at. That is my prediction. It is optimistic. I am an optimist in this manner, and it will work very well for us. Um, Digital solutions will be a key. It is quite likely that we will be very worried about um, the pandemic situation, this whole social distancing issue. We will be worried about it, and it'll stay at the back of our mind. So we will internalize it in the everyday things that we do, both at work and at home, in which case IT will become a major player. So, thank you very much for listening. I've been talking for about 27 minutes or so. I will be very happy to take questions, and I will stop sharing my screen now. I'll go to my the, okay. So, how should we do this, Manish? Do you
Yeah,
want to
so
read?
sir, yeah, so we are just opening our floor for the question answer now. So you people can type in their question in the chat window. I already been able to see a couple of questions coming in. Sir,
Sure.
you in the presentation you talked about alternative to Zoom Jitsi. So Naresh is want to know that sir, how much safe is Jitsi?
It is, I would say it is reasonably safe. There are two ways of using Jitsi. One is, you can use it like Zoom on the Zoom cloud. And you can go to Jitsi and set up, a session and use it. The other interesting thing is you can set up Jitsi as a server in your own premises. So if you're in a large organization, you can set up Jitsi internally. It is open source software, and that is what we are exploring. So we don't go to like a Zoom cloud, which has some security issues. So I would say now it has the basic security aspects that are built in, which is quite fine. Just
Sir,
one second.
yeah.
Just 1 second. Give me a. Can you give me a pause for one? Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah. So
Manish.
yeah. So sir, we have another question from Saurabh. Why are strategic information systems difficult to build and maintain?
Wow. Okay, that's a big question. Very good question. See, strategic information systems are what we call systems which give you some kind of competitive advantage. So, what is a strategic? For example, something like an ERP, people bring into their organizations, and those are usually called strategic because they reorient your company and your operations to meet the competition, and you can get to newer markets. Maybe you can reduce costs and so on. And the opposite of the strategic information systems are things that let you do specific things, like Zoom. Zoom is a tool right now which lets you do online meetings very easily. Google Docs is a way to collaborate over documents quite easily, and that way they are not necessarily strategic, but they could become strategic. Now, your question was why is it difficult to manage them? Strategic means systems means you actually have to orient your entire company to deal with the system and the processes that you have to actually fight your competition. So it's not enough to simply get an ERP system and just implement it. It is, you actually have to change your entire company, the way you do business, to gain that strategic advantage. Why? That's why they're called strategic systems. I hope I answered that question.
Yes. So sir, there's another question from Nishchay. How does information management chaos happen on the web?
I missed the last part. How does it information management?
Chaos happen on the web. I mean to say that how does the information management system, traffic jam or something like that happen on the web? Why there's so much stress sometimes which is happen on the web?
Okay, that see, one is one is limited bandwidth. um, See, the whole internet is literally a connection of nodes, as they say. So I am Bangalore, and we have a pretty good bandwidth coming in, meaning we have a good pipe, good connection with other, the ISPs, and we are connected to companies on nearby. Now, one problem that happens with bandwidth management is that sometimes our internals, our architecture doesn't work well. There may be something wrong with the router or something. so the bandwidth gets messed up. It's not very clean. The other side is sometimes there's a trouble in the city. There may be a rupture of a cable somewhere in the city, or there may be problems at the national level. Uh, um, Again, I mentioned this in my text. We connect to the world through majorly two ports. One is through Mumbai, and we have these undersea cables going from Mumbai to the rest of the world. And the other one, big one, is actually Chennai. From Chennai, we connect to Singapore and that side. Now, if there is something wrong, and this has happened sometimes out in the Mediterranean Sea, there is a rupture in some cables, and that affects our data flows. So that creates the chaos that probably you're mentioning. The internet is a, it's a global resource, and things happening today, it is so densely connected that, if there's a cable cut somewhere in Hong Kong, it may not affect us so much, but if there is a cable cut closer to us, we will get affected. And if there is cable problems, connectivity problems inside the city, we will get affected. So we are affected by the networks around us. I should also mention something you have to be conscious of, especially if you're managing these things, is that sometimes if the traffic in, let's say, I am Bangalore, where I am, increases significantly, we are having some event, we are doing a lot of streaming, then strangely enough, it will affect our neighbors, because we all share the connectivity, the pipes through which data flows. So for a certain period of time, they may be affected, and likewise for us. So those are some of the causes why there is chaos on the networks.
So, sir, there's one more question from Dr. Nirmal,
Mhm.
and they want to know that your thoughts about the data security.
Okay. See, data security today, it's a very, very big subject. So I'll say a few things. One, our own understanding of data security in India is, I think, a little weak. For example, the the firms that get most affected with data security are banks. And just a year or so ago, the Reserve Bank of India made it mandatory for all banks to go through security training, because they were getting affected and literally money was being stolen. And people's money was being stolen, and RBI came and said, this won't do. You have to uh, change this. And so the security consciousness in banks was being raised. The other place where security consciousness is being worked on, though it is not very good right now, is government. Many government offices have had severe security issues, very severe. Data loss, data theft, people hacking in, and governments don't lose money, they lose information, which is sometimes vital. And so it has been an issue which, many governments are, the officers are cognizant of this, they are aware of this, and they are working on it, but it has been a severe issue. The third level, I will talk about people. You and I, we have to be made very conscious of security issues, because we just don't understand what is going on with security. Take, for instance, just these guys who fool you. You may have read about this in papers. They fool you into taking money out of your wallets. So there's this scam going around where they send you a QR code, and they ask you to scan the QR code to actually, they'll say, I will send you some money. They'll say, I'll send you 5 rupees, just as a trial. So you scan the QR code, and then they take 50,000 rupees out of you, out from your wallets. So this is a scam that has been running now. Mercifully, it has come down when people became aware of it. But we have to be very, very conscious of this. particularly as we increase as I was saying, increase these digital wallet usage and digital payments usage. We have to become very, very conscious. So at the level of the firm and banks, at the level of government, at the level of us individually, we have to become very conscious. And please keep in mind also that these issues of security and privacy are very strongly related. So we have to protect our privacy, along with that our security.
So, sir,
Okay.
there's one more. Yeah, yeah. So, there's one more question from Anil Kumar. How the current situation is going to impact teaching, learning in higher education and on education institutes?
Oh, very good question. Something that concerns me directly. We are going to face a very severe crisis. One of the things immediate, this is the second order effect, as I was saying, all of us are going online. At least, next 2 to 3 months, whatever classes will start online. So that will be one effect. Now online means, um, basically the students you had who would have been coming in anyway, you admit them and you start classes. Now there is another set of students whom you have not admitted. So many colleges, schools and so on have not admitted students. So how do you get students on board? How do you bring them? uh, how do you interview them? How do you do exams? These are huge challenges. uh, you cannot do exams without proctoring, and you have to proctor. You need to have people in one room. Then how do you maintain social distancing? I don't think people have figured out an answer to this easily. There are some people who have been trying online proctoring and examination software that will provide part of the solution. But India is a big country and we are talking about lakhs and crores of students. This is not going to be very easy. So the impact will be very severe. I feel there will be huge delays, that is for sure, in starting of classes, in continuation of classes. There will be some systems people will adopt of social distancing and just protection within campuses when students come back. In future, I suspect a lot of students, the whole pattern of students going from, people go from Bangalore to study in Delhi, or they come from Delhi to study in Bangalore. A lot of that may change because people just may be a little worried about going to a different place. Many of our students, many Indians go to USA and Europe to study. That will get affected in a big way, because as you know, all these countries are putting up a lot of these visa restrictions, travel restrictions, and because they will do so, at least in the next year, things will be very tight. So the impacts will be quite large in higher education.
So, sir, there's one more question from Abhishek. He wants to know that what kind of policies should a company make to reduce techno stress in their employees?
Very good question. Very good question. I have been writing about this, and also there is fair bit of research now. So let's take two or three of the easy ones. First, this learning new technologies, uh, the getting employees used to and understanding the technologies, helping them out will be very important. This creates a lot of stress. I recall first time I was using Zoom, I didn't know how to share my screen. Then when I figured it out, I shared my screen. Then I didn't know how to get out of it. So, it is very frustrating. You want to get out, you don't know, you're looking around, and other people are telling you, do this, do that. You can't find the button. I remember in one meeting, one presenter couldn't find the screen itself. She says, "Where is the Zoom screen? Where is it gone?" I was so that creates a lot of stress. So first is learning the technology. That's very important. Second one, the techno stress comes from this whole work from home culture, which is actually work all the time culture. This has to be regulated, and I think governments have to pass regulations, and some of us will insist on the government to do this. Just like in the industrial revolution, workers had to fight. This was in Europe, and they had to fight to say that we will work for 8 hours. 8 hours is the working limit per day. That's how you have that 9 to 5 culture, which we have all internalized. But for digital working, where is the 8 hours? You are actually working all the time until you go to sleep, and you can't see your messages anymore. You're working. So we have to find resolutions. I think companies themselves have to first come up with these norms, saying, okay, we expect you to work till about this time, and after that we expect that you will go offline, and we don't want you on this. That is very important, and companies have to do this. So this work from home culture, this, you have to have limits on this. Then the techno stress comes from the constant surveillance that is going on. uh, Companies have to now again come up with policies saying, while you're working, we expect that some things may be monitored, but we have to tell employees, we are not monitoring every line that you write. Just now I had to get up and go somewhere. That is okay. I think Manish was okay with it. I don't have to explain to you why I got up and went. It is okay. It is kind of natural. Sometimes there is a need to do this. We would do this in offices also. So at least these three things that you manage, the uh, let people understand the technology, tell people that there are limits, you don't have to work all the time. Third, tell people that you are not being monitored. This monitoring creates a lot of stress that builds up. So those are three things at least that I can suggest for this part.
So there's another question from Nidhi Bhatia, and she wants to know that how Insta, YouTube, Twitter analyze what are the softwares and how they do sensitivity analysis and text analysis.
Wow. Oh, this is a very big question here. So, see, Twitter is kind of the norm now, where people do a lot of text and what is called sentiment analysis on Twitter. The Twitter feeds, as you know, are public feeds, and a lot of them are accessible to you. Twitter itself gives you access that can be read, and of course you can buy these Twitter feeds. You have to pay a lot of money, and Twitter is mainly text. The analysis you do is on text. So there are now text analysis tools available, which will to give you a simple example, what they can do is, in fact, recently we received a Twitter feed that was being circulated on reactions to the lockdown. So one thing people can do is take a look at all the Twitter messages, which will be in crores of them, millions and millions of them. You can look at those messages and try to identify in a sentiment analysis whether people are frustrated with the lockdown, or they are okay with the lockdown. Let's say that is the question you ask. So what they typically do is they look for certain words that are being used, or sets of words that indicate frustration or that indicate acceptance. And then that analysis is done by these algorithms, and some of them are available online also for free. You can run the text through them and get a sense of what is Twitter saying. And this is used, you may be knowing, very extensively in very various campaigns that go on, either political campaigns or market campaigns. People go and look at these Twitter feeds. The similar thing happens on Instagram. Instagram is more related to images and video, and there it's a lot harder actually to do an analysis whether the image was a happy image or a sad image. So again, there is work going on in that. People try to do some broad classification, but mainly the successful stories are in text. So people see text messages on things like Facebook, Twitter, also on other blogs, and try to estimate whether things went well or things didn't go well. This is a very, very active area of work. There's a lot of money in it. There are many startups who do this for you. So that's how the text, they take text and look at the words in it. That's how they do this.
So, sir, there's another question from Dr. Mukesh, and he wants to know that, sir, during work from home culture, please give some tips to manage balance between digital and personal life at home.
Oh, yes, very good question. So one of the things, the easy one that people say is, keep your family informed of the times that you will be online. So tell them, look, like I told my family, I have to, from 11 to 12, I will be online for this class. And so, they understood. And likewise, you have to respect when they are going online. Uh, the second one that many people are now saying, that you must have planned breaks. Like right now, I'm talking to you guys. I will now get up, go have some tea or something, and before I start working on some other things that are required, I will make sure I get a break, and that in that break, try to either stay calm by yourself, or chit chat a little with non-stressful conversation with some friends or family members, um, and relax. Stay away from digital media. Don't look at your phone in that window. That's what they're saying. So once I stop talking to you guys, I will not look at my phone. I will sit down, maybe see the newspaper, have something to eat, then come back to work. So those are at least couple of them. Then the people say, like, that's true for the other aspects also. Try to limit the amount of time. So I know some companies have evolved this culture of having meetings in the morning. So early in the morning they wake up like 7:30 or so. If you're in the same time zone, you have your meetings from 7:30 till maybe 9:30 or so. That's when the family is waking up also, and kids are not going to school, or spouses are also getting ready. So meetings are done. Now you do the other stuff that you are, yeah. And in that window you can actually, at least the first 2 hours, you can maintain quite a tight schedule, maybe not take too many breaks, just go through it quickly with the meetings. So these are some 2 3 things that people are using to manage the work from home stress issues.
So, sir, there's one more question from Ashutosh. Sir, how research scholar can do experimental work from home? This is a basic problem for research scholars.
Wow. Very good question. I have, been thinking about the same thing. See, one of the thing, if you take research, there are a couple of uh, things in there. One good news is a lot of libraries are opening up their books and journals and all that. So reading is much better. So in fact, just yesterday I got a lot of free books. Springer. Let me mention that to all of you. I know you are all fans of Wiley. Wiley may be also giving away free books, but Springer is giving away a lot of free books for this period. I downloaded some 6 or 7 yesterday. I won't be able to read all of them, but at least I get a sense of those books and keep them as references. Some other publishers are also giving away books. Some journals are giving away articles. So that's a good thing. Now, the other part of research is data collection, writing, collaboration. Data collection is hard, I agree. You can't go out. So if you are doing experimental work, like in information systems, we do a lot of experimental work. If it is online, then it's fine. I don't know if you're familiar with A/B testing. So if you're testing some things online for information and reactions, you can create the A and B groups online and do the tests. Again, it will be hard. You have to get on, talk to people, get them to do your tests. But if you have to visit people and collect data, I have one student who she's actually calling up people. She's sitting at home and calling up people, but it's hard. It's quite difficult. So the third part, if you're doing collaboration writing, you know what? I've been doing a lot of writing, so I'm quite happy with that. Almost all my collaborators are at home, so you can call them anytime and say, "Hey, what's up? Let's work on this." And sure enough, and they call me anytime because they know I'm at home. I'm not going anywhere unless there is a meeting of the sort. So research work, the data collection part is affected, but the other parts are not bad. They're okay.
So, sir, there's one more. Just to add on to that, sir, Wiley is also offering some books in management and engineering free for the institute till 31st of May.
Oh, very nice. Is it online?
Yeah, is it online, sir?
Oh, okay. So we have to go to the Wiley site and download a few books. That's very nice.
So, sir, there's one more question from Daksh, and he wants to know how do agile companies build their information system master plan?
Wow. uh, I'm not sure I fully understand that question. I think I know where you're coming from because agile is a more or less a reactive way of building systems. So you don't really build a master plan for it in the way you would do for a let's say a traditional waterfall kind of system. So good question, but see, agile is think of it as a way of building things, and it's a very good way of building things, very successful way, and it's more or less everybody's building through the agile method. But keep in mind, it is not similar to the master plan. So, in my book, I talk about something called having the technology roadmap. So, if you are like, let's take Wiley as a company. Wiley is into publishing and distributing books all over the world. Um, Wiley will have thought through uh, what their information technology needs are for maybe the next 3 to 4 years. Not in terms of hardware and software what they need, but in terms of how will it help their business. So maybe Wiley wants to get into digital books, so they would have thought through, this is the market we want to get into, and this is the kind of technologies we need. Now that thinking is regardless of how you build that technology. So Wiley may hire an Infosys and say, okay, let's build something using the agile method, but that is independent. Wiley's main strategic, the master plan, the thinking is along business lines where they try to understand what their business is, where it is going, and how they build their information systems infrastructure to support them. That's the key issue, and that will be regardless. And in fact, I argue in my book that whatever it is, you have to think through what you want with the systems, then go and build those systems, or buy them, or get somebody else to build them, whatever it is. That is not a problem.
So, sir, there's one more question from
Sure.
Sanjay. What are the roles of library in this situation?
Roles of?
Library in this
Oh,
situation.
wow, tough question. See, libraries are, I can answer from IMB. Libraries are kind of directing in these situations. They are, informing us these resources are available since all of us are at home. In fact, the library informed us of these free books that are available. Many publishers are giving free books and directed to us to them. Libraries are also, in fact, somebody had asked a data question before, about research, are also directing us to data repositories where you can get data for research and companies can have data. So libraries, I know many libraries in US and Europe have almost opened up their entire digital collection for their members. Just take whatever you like, and many of them which have to do with health have completely opened up the health related publications so that people can learn about how to manage during this crisis. So that's the role they are playing. What role will they play in future? Similar to what they were doing before, I think their role will not be enhanced that much as they will become the central, tour guides of what is in the library. Most of us, when we go to a library, we are kind of lost. There's so much around. So the librarian's job will be to point out, go here, go there. That will be the same in the digital world also. I typically, when I go to our online library collections, I'm lost. I type something and I get, 40,000 books, papers. So it's really, that's when somebody who knows those or how to find things will help.
So, sir, there's
Great.
one more question from
Sure.
Dr. Vikas, and he wants to know, sir, how extend this digitization can replace the physical process in the future, especially in the education sector?
A good question. This is people have very varying views. My view is strongly that digitization will replace a lot of the face-to-face. It is already, the trend is happening. Face to face will become more specialized. There are some things that you cannot teach in a digitized manner. For instance, we do case studies in my institute. Case studies, uh, you have to have a discussion, and the other people have to be in the room to have that discussion, or it's usually best if it's done synchronously. Asynchronous doesn't work very well. uh, can you do that on Zoom? Yeah, I think you can. So that way you can do it on Zoom, but it's actually better to do it face to face. So that's one example. Sometimes group learning and the learning in the presence of a teacher is very helpful. In those cases, digitization won't work. But other cases, if you see companies like Byju's, that's a very good example, or you see edX, I have a course on edX, or you see, Coursera and so on, uh, they are doing a brilliant job of delivering a lot of content, which otherwise you would have had to go to class and take uh, offline, and people are benefiting from it. So over time, I think this space will shrink. In the United States and all, even in India, education, higher education is becoming very expensive. United States, it's really expensive, and people have to take big loans and go to college. And the question that is coming is, if I need to learn something which can be learned offline at a very low cost, why am I going to pay 10 times the amount to get a degree? Most of the time the degree was for to tell the job market that I have a nice degree from IIM Bangalore, give me a job. Now I hope that continues. I need a job also in IIM Bangalore. So now the question will become, when you go to IIM Bangalore, what is it that you have learned that you could not have picked up, like watching some courses on edX or Coursera? And we are cognizant of that. We are aware of that. We are now shifting our curriculum, our teaching, to things that are very subtle, which need the teacher. So we want to stay relevant. If you can learn statistics by seeing an online course and reading one of Wiley's books and doing all the answers, then why do you need to go to college? That's one answer. And let me also mention that college is not simply about learning some concepts like statistics and MIS and so on. College is also about mixing with people and learning from others. There are other skills we pick up in college and school and so on. And that's where a strong fight back comes from the the people who argue against digitization, saying what happens to that part of it. And I agree that there is massive learning there. So in places like ours in IIM Bangalore, students learn from each other as much as they learn from the teachers and from the material. And they build lifelong relationships. They have these cohorts, they know each other, they grow in their careers and jobs, and that's very important. So the answer is, there is a big role for educational institutions, but it cannot be sustained at these very high cost levels. It just won't work. And I have a feeling this digitization will put a downward pressure on costs, and that in the long run will have some effects which we will work out as we go along. So, Manish, I think we are done with our time. Are there any more
Yes,
questions?
sir, there are no questions, but just we can take one more last question.
Yeah.
So, sir, first, Maitri wants to know that how we get to know that our shared data is secured or not.
Shared data. See, the only way we will get to know is through legislation. The government has to tell us that it is secure. So, I mean, this is a good question. We actually never know. We don't know this. When the government takes steps, in Europe, they have passed this thing called the GDPR, General Data Protection Rules. So, the GDPR assures citizens of Europe that some security policies are being followed by the government, by the private players, those who are collecting their data, and they feel assured that things are not being violated, and that's the only way out. Otherwise, we don't know. uh, you and I don't know how our data is being used in a bank or whether it is secure or not. We actually don't know that right now. So the good news is government of India is also going to pass this PDP bill. It's got stuck in parliament, but once it does, we will have some sort of assurance that we will at least there is some protection measures. But technically speaking, we don't know. We can't know that. We will know in case of breach, but otherwise we won't know. Good question.
Thanks, sir, for joining in today and sharing your best knowledge. And thanks everyone for joining in. And thanks again, once, sir, for giving this out the wonderful session and giving out your time on Saturday. Thanks, sir.
Yes, thank you very much, Manish, and thanks to all of you. I had seen almost there were 130 of you online at some point. I wish I had talked to you one on one, but maybe at some other point when we are in happier times. Thank you very much, and I will sign off right now. Thank you,
Okay.
Manish, and
Thank you,
thank
sir.
you, Wiley team.
Thank you, sir.